Hi, hey, hello. Welcome to episode 20 of Trail Society, brought to you by Free Trail. I'm Corrine Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
Episode 20, you guys. How exciting is that?
It's so exciting. And I'm glad that you're back here as our host because I tried to do it last time and it wasn't the same.
Okay, funny story. The podcast app was just going on my phone and I had finished a run and whatever I was listening to ended. And then our podcast came up next on my phone and it was like our intro music. And then it was like, hi, hey, hello. And I was like, that's not me.
I tried to.
It was very cute. It made me chuckle and smile in my little hotel room on Madeira. But we just want to thank everyone, like all of you listening out there. We wouldn't be here without you. I would definitely yell into the void even if you weren't listening, but we're really happy that you do listen and that you share this with your friends and that you leave us glowing reviews and you are responsible for creating this community. And I think from the bottom of all of our hearts, we want to thank you for being part of our listening audience and continuing to share what we're doing here on the Trail Society podcast and within Free Trail. So thank you so very much. I think we're going to dive into some super exciting races that happened over the weekend though.
Yeah, one of which you were in, and I can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, this is awesome. I'll start with Madeira. So the Madeira Island Ultra Trail. There's many different races that happened that weekend, but the title race, the big one, is the 115-kilometer race. And I hope you guys had seen, over Free Trail, Dylan had launched kind of for Canyons and for Madeira, the picks, the fantasy picks for these races. So I hope you guys get a chance to check that out. It's a really cool interactive way and way to kind of engage and kind of place your quote unquote bets on who's going to win and compare your results to the actual thing. But yeah, Madeira, Courtney, man, I was just blown away. She won with the new course record. She broke her own record. It used to be 15 hours, 17 minutes. Now it's 14:40. She won by about 90 minutes. Audrey Tanguay was second, a super strong French runner, and Catherine Goetz was third. I forget exactly where she's from, but her very own Corrine.
She's Swiss. Yeah, she's Swiss. And she's so strong.
She's so amazing. Strong. I know. I've raced both Audrey and Catherine in TDS, and they're oh man, they're beasts. So, and then Corrine, you were eighth. And so we'll dive more into this, obviously, later in the episode. But yeah, I wanted to also, and this is a question I'll have for you later, but I think that the conditions this year were pretty dry, overall, but we can... Maybe the heat preparation talk, we had a couple at the same.
It was muddy,
right?
If you've seen the photos of me finishing, my legs are mostly mud. Yeah, we'll talk about it more. It was it rained, it snowed. It was not icy, but it was slippery out there.
Yeah. And so then the men, Jim Walmsley, man, new course record. I think it was 12 hours, 40 minutes. So it's just flying on this course. Thibaut Garvière and then Jean-Philippe Tishumi. So some strong European runners there. I don't know really much about Jean-Philippe, but Thibaut, he's
Thibaut is legit, and there was a Hoka sweep for the men's race, which was very impressive. And yeah, Jim was just under 13 hours, I think, very impressive time on that course. It was, very, I did not get to watch it, but it was very cool to see afterwards how well they ran.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then I feel like something to comment on is maybe conditions or something, right? Because Hillary, when you ran, it was a completely different time of year.
Totally.
And times were just completely different because the top man was close to Courtney's time. So,
exactly. Yeah. So that's something I noticed too. I think the conditions were, it's always, I think, pretty wet, but from kind of the people that I talked to,
you guys had icy conditions.
We did,
which was very different.
Icy and muddy. I know I think it was just different mud. It was pretty saturated because it had been raining for months before. And I know you guys had some rain during the race, but I had heard and our race actually got canceled halfway through because off the high point because of storms moving in. But I heard that there were some issues with like heat, like almost like heat stroke. Like it was just very dry, even though you guys got some rain. So it's so crazy how it can vary from year to year.
Yeah, it's wild because there were people that were super cold on course. Like I was getting updates from, and I got cold, but as long as you kept moving, it was fine. But I was getting updates from our crew that like, oh, like the women just in front of me were all so cold. Like they all left the aid station shivering. So it was kind of a weird, but there were also sections that were very warm. We didn't get sun. We got direct sun for only a little bit on the course. Courtney finished in the rain. We had varieties of mud out there. We had peanut butter mud. We had benign mud. We had, just greasy stairs, but we didn't have ice that you guys had in November. Like you guys had some legit icy sections out there. And I think my guess is that we got a little bit more daylight too, which it's just easier to run when you can see the trail 100% of the time. Totally. So I think I think might be because traditionally other spring times for this race, even when conditions have been wet, were faster than what was in November. And the field was bigger here. Like I think between all 4 races in November, there was just over 1,000 runners. And between all 4 races this past weekend, there were the most ever, like 3,200 and something runners. The men, like the mute, the big race, had just under 1,000 runners starting. So just kind of interesting to see how that played out. There was a small course change between the 2019 course and the one that I think you ran in the fall and the one and what we ran this weekend. But the Levadas stayed pretty dry. The stuff like on the south side, or I guess the stuff on the like from the start was muddy, and then it got a little bit better, I think, as the race went on. Whereas I think you guys had pretty consistent slickness throughout the remainder of the race. But we'll dive into that more. What I will say though is that the mute race director during the pre-race briefing broke down every single race by participant numbers, and there were like men versus women in each of the races. And I think in the big race, and like made good comments about it. Like, like we're trying to increase these numbers. In the long race, it was 859 men and 117 women. And then as you got shorter in distance, it became equal or more and more equal. I think in the marathon, the 42K, it was almost exactly 50-50. And then in the 16K, there's actually more women than men in that race. So I think that tracks with everything that we've talked about this year, where the shorter the race gets, the more women are involved. The longer the race gets, the fewer women we see participating. And so trying to bridge that gap a little bit. But it was really cool that in his pre-race briefing, he made a point to bring that up and mention that and talk about, that they're exciting to see these numbers slowly changing and shifting with more women competing in like the 60K and the 85K and the 115K. So
yeah, well, I mean, even just the 115K, that's almost 60-40.
Like it's not bad. Yeah. It's not bad. So they did just cannot speak highly enough of the race organization. They did a really phenomenal job getting that many runners across the island on Saturday. But the other, many big races happened this weekend, but the other, I think, key race that happened this weekend was the Canyons 100K over in Auburn, California. I was happy that I finished and was able to follow along with the finish of the men's and women's races. And they were just super exciting. I think once again, just like Black Canyon 100K, they had 3 golden tickets on the line for both the men and women. So an extra ticket up for grabs, which ended up, playing out in an interesting way in the men's and women's race. The only woman on the start line who I don't think needed a golden ticket was Brittany Peterson, because she returning top 10 Western States finisher. So that it made the race for the golden ticket on the women's side, I think, particularly compelling. Jasmine Lowther. I should probably watch the I Run Far interview so I know how to say her name, because I will have to pronounce it on Western States race day. We were told after her 3rd place finish at Chuckanut, hey, watch out for this Canadian gal. I think she's from Nelson, British Columbia. She's, she does ski mountaineering stuff. She's very, very strong. She was 1 second under Beth Pascal's course record from last year. But I will say that Beth's time, for those of you who who don't remember this, Beth missed a turn towards the end and we actually sent her back out on course. So Beth's time was probably, if she had run the right course the first time around, probably was about 5 to 6 minutes faster than Jasmine this weekend. But because Beth missed that turn and had to go back out on course, Jasmine was able to sneak under that record by a second, which is incredibly fast on this course that I think has a net uphill. It's like 14,000 feet of climbing. Like it's not an easy run. Leah Yingling, or as I think Keely put it in the results, Leah MF. Ling, you were so excited for you. I'm dying. I was like crying, like looking at Instagram stories. Her husband, Mike, was out there taking photos. They're beautiful photos from the race, from all the racers out there. She came through Forest Hill in 6th place and ended up taking 2nd. Like this girl closes like nobody's business. She was hunting Keely at Gorge 50K just a couple weeks ago. So I'm so excited to see her race Western States. She came up just short at Madeira earlier this year where she was in a golden ticket position until like the last 10 miles. And then her stomach turned and she ended up finishing outside of the golden tickets. So it was bound to happen. Leah finally has her golden ticket.
Yeah, it was so fun to watch because I feel like everyone at Gorge told me that she is a huge closer. And so when I turned around at the turnaround at 50K, she was only like 7 or so minutes back. And I was like, okay, yeah, she's right there. So I can't back off because everyone's warning me that she's really good at closing. And then just to watch her race the 100K and just kick it up a notch and like just go crazy closing was so, so cool. Going from 6th to 2nd is so important for this kind of race too. So it'll be really cool to see what she does at States.
Yeah. And additionally, I think she moved into 2nd only in the last couple miles. She closed on the Spanish runner that runs for Kraft. I'm going to say her name is Arroyo Cio Sea.
With like 3 miles left?
Yeah, with 3 miles left, that's when that change happened. So imagine if there had only been 2 golden tickets on the line.
Right.
Like how insane would that have been? So really, really cool. Spanish runner in 3rd. So Kraft will have 2 women in Western States with Tessa Chesser also getting a golden ticket at Javelina. Ladia, I would say fan favorite, Ladia Albertson Junkins, and ultimately ended up finishing 4th. I think she was in 2nd for a lot of the race early on and ended up finishing 4th place. She had a baby 15 or 16 months ago, just at a set or is very close to the course record at chucking a 50K, like very, very fast runner. She will get a golden ticket at some point. Again, she's already gotten one once before and be back at Western States, just not this year. So hopefully she'll be out there crewing and spectating for someone. And then the men's race, I think we were all waiting for Adam Peterman to win. And not only did he win, but he set a course record. As of the recording of this podcast, Adam Peterman has not decided if he's taking the ticket or not. When this comes out, maybe that'll have been decided at that point because they get 2 weeks to decide before it can roll down to the next runner. Set the course record. I think we'd all love to see Adam Peterman run Western States, but he'll make the decision that's right for him. David Sinclair, I know him from the Nordic ski world. I was not surprised that he was 2nd. I'm sure he surprised some people that he was 2nd. The guy has an engine. Super great run for him. He almost immediately, I think, declined his ticket. And that will have rolled down to 4th place, which we'll mention in a second. And then Jared Hazen was 3rd. I'm particularly excited about Jared Hazen getting back into Western States. He's had a lot of change in the past year. He started working with Jason Koop. He left Hoka, which he's been with for a long time and is now a Solomon athlete. I'm really excited because I feel like he's taking ownership in his running in a way. Like what he was doing was not working or wasn't working as well as it could have for him. And I'm really, really excited to see him be back at Western States this year again and really put together, I think, hopefully a phenomenal race. I think he's so, so abundantly talented. David Sinclair's ticket that he declined rolled down to 4th in Rod Farvard. He's a East Side guy, Mammoth guy. Tim Tollefson, that was his pick for a golden ticket for Canyons 100K. And if Tim Tollefson's rooting for you, you're probably a pretty good person to bet on. I believe he has one of the supported JMT records. So the guy is not unfamiliar for going long. He was part of Tessa's crew for Javelina. So it's really cool that they will both be in Western States, kind of representing, I guess Tessa's back in Flagstaff, but kind of representing the East Side, running. And then possibly if Adam turns down his golden ticket, it would roll down to Anthony Lee, who ran a great race for 5th place. So much excitement at the Canyons 100K race this weekend. I was so bummed that I couldn't be there in person. It was so cool.
I know, it was so cool to watch. I was like constantly refreshing everything.
We were supposed to do live commentary for it this year. We had been talking, Dylan and I, as Free Trail, talking to the race directors about doing it, but we couldn't quite get the infrastructure in place for it this year. But I imagine with it continuing to be a by UTMB race, them adding 100-mile distance to it next year, which seems a little crazy. There will be hopefully live commentary at that event next year. So you'll get to, not only will I Run Far hopefully be out there tweeting out results, but if we can put infrastructure in place that will benefit both Western States and Canyons for cell phone service and that kind of thing, we are hopeful that we'll be doing live commentary for this race next year. Yay.
Yeah, I wonder what the 100-mile would be. Just reverse Western
States. Well, you can't go past Robinson Flat, right? Because they'll want to keep the race entry field big enough, and that's like where that permitting issue I think starts. So
okay,
backwards Western States. I'm in.
Yeah, I was like, what?
net uphill Western States.
Oh boy.
A couple more races that were happening this weekend were a little faster, so they were more road or track-based races. The first one being the 100K USA Champs, and it was taking place at Mad City like it has, I think, for the past couple of years now. And Callie Demergen, I don't know if that's how I say it, but her handle's Road Running Remlin, in case you guys follow her. She was she was very open about having rhabdo at her last 100K experience. And then has kind of taken us all through her journey of like figuring out how to not have that happen again and just being really open about her recovery. And so it was really cool to see her win this one. So now she's going to go represent Team USA at World Champs. And so that's really exciting. And then the first place guy was Zach Bevan, who is a road runner who kind of turned trail recently and just got second at JFK in
he's
2021.
Fast.
He's a speedy guy.
He broke the strolling gym record last year, which is like one of the oldest ultras in the country. And it was a super old, I can't remember. I think it's like a 40-mile race. I'm probably incorrect on that. Someone will correct me. But it's a very old, very classic road ultra. And he broke the course record on it. And the course record was from like the 80s, I want to say, or the 90s. So I know that it was over 20 years old, the record that he broke. So very, very cool that he was able to, I'm excited to see more from him outside of some road stuff, maybe some fast trail stuff.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of fast, we have another crazy endeavor going on at the Centurion running 100-mile race / 24-hour race, kind of however long you wanted to go, I think, to get a record. Anyways, clearly I don't race track races, but Camille Herron from the USA, we all know her. She was there going after some Masters records, and she took home a ton. Some of the notable ones was she ran through 50-mile at 7:20 pace, and then ran through 100K as a world record, not just a Masters record, in 7:39.06. So she beat her old record, and then kind of called it a day after 70 miles. So didn't want to go the full 100, I guess. I'd say that's a pretty good day. And then on the men's side, we had some world records there too, with Alexander Sorokin beating Jim's 100K world record, I believe. Or
I think Jim came up just short of the 100K world record.
Yeah. So this guy got the new 100K world record from the previous one that was standing. So.
Yeah, he's Lithuanian, and he's put together I'm pretty sure he's Lithuanian, and he's put together a bunch of crazy track and 24-hour performances. Like he's very, very fast.
It's crazy. I think he's sub 6-minute pace for 100K.
Oh my gosh.
Gross.
So
I want to be sub 6-minute pace for like a mile.
5K.
Maybe a mile, maybe 3 point something miles.
Yeah. And then we had one more race come up in the DMs, the Whiskey Basin 92K. And Elsa McDonald, she is no stranger to the ultra running world. She got first overall, so she won the whole thing. And she's also running Western States. So that's a good race to kind of piggyback into Western States with. And she's one of the few people who's beat Courtney head to head. So she's someone to look out for. That is for sure.
Yeah, I remember she ran Western States in 2018, and that was the year that she beat Courtney. It was at like an early season golden ticket race, and it was like kind of wild. We're like, someone can beat Courtney on the trails. So she's very, very strong, and when she's on, she's really on. So excited to see what she can do coming back to Western States this year. But before we roll into kind of the meat and potatoes, we have a little bit of news that we're going to cover this week. Not too much. Keely, I'm wondering if you want to kind of intro it a little bit.
Sure. So Grace Stauberg is a girl who has been coming a little bit into the ultra running world, but she's most notoriously known for being an uphill skier, so a ski-mo or ski mountaineer racer. And Outside launched an article discussing her eating disorder remission, written from her point of view. So she wrote the article, and it was really raw, and it really just spoke to the struggles that girls and guys can go through during sport, and how hard it can be for them to seek like help and to step away from their sport, but that when they do, they're able to kind of find their way again. And so you don't have to kind of suffer to no avail. You can take a step back. And so this article is just really good to just see that you're not alone when you do have those struggles, and that you can take a step back, and that's okay. And sometimes it's definitely the better decision.
Yeah, I think she was at Broken Arrow. So she did the Triple Crown there alongside Hilly. And I think that, she races a lot. She trains a lot. She's got big goals. She's super young. Like, is she 20 yet? She might be 19. She's still, I think, a junior in the ski-mo circuit. And I can't remember if they do a true U23 circuit. So she might be 19 or 20. And so, she's got a lot of pressure that she's puts on herself. And I think that it was a very relatable article. Definitely, I would agree, very, very raw to read about her, just opening up about her relapse with her eating disorder that I think she's had since like middle school. Because I feel like there's an old trail running association or trail running article about that experience. So it's very interesting to I don't know, get to kind of reflect on another individual's experience with this. And I do hope that her being open about it, can help other athletes see that they're not alone, or maybe what they're experiencing is, has a name to it type of thing, and being open about it not being, okay, I think is really important. And Amelia Boone, we've mentioned her a lot in the same breath, has been very, very open and very public about her own struggles with eating disorders over her entire life, basically, probably started in a very similar place to Grace as a young athlete. And so I think sharing those experiences are important, because it does kind of give us all a time to pause and reflect on our own personal experiences and personal life struggles.
Yeah. And one thing she did call out was that what we call from our body is a lot. Like, our sports are extremely hard, but she was coming to points where she was questioning if she would survive, like if she could physically survive it, not because of just the sport being hard, but because of where she was at with her in her body and her health. And so it was just really eye-opening to remind yourselves that what we're doing is really hard, but when it comes to a point where it's beyond that level of suffering and of that level of difficulty, then we do need to start questioning things and think about the long-term goals.
Yeah. So we're all rooting for Grace to hopefully continue to find, a path that allows her to be healthy and well, and all those adjectives that are probably in their own regards, maybe not the perfect ones for it, but, rooting for her with our whole community to continue to find, a safe place to share these thoughts, but also, continuing to find a safe place within her own body and within her own sport. So that we do get to see her when she's in her 20s and in her 30s. But she is a beautiful writer, and I follow her on Instagram. She's got really wonderful kind of long form Instagram captions. So keep an eye out for Grace and send her your well wishes as she continues to kind of try to pursue both health and sport, which I think is a balance that we're all trying to strike. That's all I got.
Well said. Well, yeah. So now, should we get into the meat and potatoes, Corrine, as you say?
I love the meat and potatoes. I'm all about the meat and potatoes and a side of pie.
We're going to get all of that. I mean, I'm just so excited to talk to you about, and we kind of did it for after my race in Madeira, but yeah, like kind of doing a deep dive into Madeira and your race. Like, I mean, just there's a lot that goes into getting on a start line, right? And I know like you kind of everyone should follow Corrine, but if you didn't kind of know about, Corrine's story, just what was it like for you to just stand on that start line, to be there, right? Like at Madeira.
Yeah, I wrote about this a little bit this past week that the goal of Madeira was to get to Madeira, was to be there on the start line and get to the finish line just after, reflecting on what the last couple of years have been like. Like my last international start line was UTMB in 2019. My last race was Black Canyon in February 2020, right before the pandemic. My last run over 50 kilometers was Tahoe Rim Trail in October of 2020. And so after the pandemic and a year of, dealing with a pretty serious injury, it kind of left me questioning if I could do the races that I like to do, right? Like, would my body let me, run 72 miles with 24,000 feet of climbing and descending? Like, that was a very real question I had for my body. And we've been very, very cautious in the build up to Madeira too. Like, I haven't done the normal volume I would probably do for a race like this. I hadn't done the normal specificity I would probably do for a race like this. In fact, we went on our honeymoon, like for the first half of the month of April, which I definitely would not do normally going into a race like this, but just kind of had to know that the goal was not necessarily to throw down my very best time possible, but it was to go and to try to just, to get there and to make it to the finish and to kind of just have the confidence again that my body would be okay with it and would let me do it. And I can say my pelvis did not hurt at all. And my quads feel like I ran down 24,000 feet of stairs. And so I think that's the right amount of discomfort post race. And, no phantom pains from those old injury sites. And that to me was like just the sweetest form of victory.
Oh, I mean, I can relate to that super, like it's like this uncertainty of kind of being on a start line. Madeira for me was, that same thing, maybe like not as long of a break, right? But it was like a first big race. And there's a lot of uncertainty that goes into it. I know we were talking kind of before. I think it's cool to be able to have like a little bit of insight and like, Corrine, you're like, so where am I really going to be like, like, where am I really going to be hurting? And I'm like, all right, I got you. Like, this is where it's at. This is where the race starts. Like, yeah. And but it's this crazy battle to learn how to trust yourself again. I feel like, and it's like, it's in like, you're doing it in real time. It's like the hardest thing to do. But I'm just wondering, like, because it's one thing to focus for a 50K, right? But it's another thing to focus for a really long effort. And this race, like, you start at midnight. So like, it's totally opposite. So, I mean, you were acclimated because you were on a European schedule, but how was it like the mentality kind of in the race? Did you struggle with that? Was it like, oh, I got this, like, this feels familiar, right? To take a bit, just, yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was the super interesting experience, like hanging out with my team post race, like the next couple of days before we flew home on Monday morning. They're like, how are you so with it? Like, you didn't sleep at all Friday, then you ran for 18 hours. Now you're like totally fine. And, they ran an 85K and they're worked. And I think to me, what that was is that I didn't have to go to the well at all. Like I hadn't done any workouts. Okay. Like I've been running and I've been cycling, but I have done no workouts, no threshold workouts, no VO2 max workouts, no workouts were done in the build up to this whatsoever. And so for me, it was like, I knew going in that I just had to do my own thing the entire time and whatever happens was going to happen. The start was fast and furious and there were poles flying and we're going up this road out of town and there's all the adrenaline and energy of everyone running and trying to figure out your own pace within like these little like conga lines of guys, making your way up these climbs and down these descents, kind of not feeling like maybe you're in complete control of your own race right away. But I didn't have to go to the well at all. And so my mindset was just really, I feel like very stable. Like, I never listen to podcasts or music or books on tape or anything when I race. I totally do when I'm running normal training days, but I've never needed it when I raced. And I I didn't have my mini phone with me for the race like I normally would carry. I had my whole iPhone 8 or whatever it is, like this brick over here. And, I had my headphones in my pack just in case. Cause I was like, man, if I start to really struggle, like I'll just listen to Harry Potter or whatever I have downloaded. And I didn't need to the entire time. I just kind of like kept in the moment and kept doing what I needed to do from aid station to aid station. But I didn't have to go to the well, which I think was good. But there was this moment where we were catching guys, we were catching men and women from the 42K and men and women from the 60K. And I hadn't seen another 115K woman runner in, I don't know, probably since like the second aid station. So probably since like, 30K in or something. And all of a sudden I saw that I was about to like catch and overtake a woman from the 115K. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, what do I want to do here? Like, do I want to pass her going as fast as I possibly can? Like competitive mindset, like totally clicked right back into place. Like it had never been gone. And I had to figure out like, oh, do I want to put my bib? Cause I was wearing like an elastic band for my bib. So it wasn't pinned to me. And I was like, do I want to flip it around to my front so she can't see it? So she has to guess if I'm like an 85K runner or if I'm a 60K runner who's got a second wind. Or I was like, I was like, do I let her know that I'm a 115K runner by keeping it on my back? Because then she'll see it when I go by her. Or because I was like, maybe she doesn't, the likelihood that she would recognize me is not super high. So I was like, maybe like, do I want to let her know or not? And it was kind of cool to like have to click into that mindset of like, am I going to mess with this person? Like, are we competing right now? Or am I like surviving right now? And so it was a pleasant mental experience where I didn't have to feel like I had to survive, right? Like I wasn't surviving. I was just kind of in it the whole time. And that was really refreshing that I didn't hate it. I was worried I was going to hate it or decide that I was going to retire from ultra running. And I haven't decided to quit ultra running yet. So that was very good. But yeah, it was a cool experience to just kind of get to like fall right back into that kind of flow and rhythm of a long effort.
That's so cool. And I mean, it gives me goosebumps hearing that. I think it's so cool because it's one of the hardest things to step on the start line is with a course like that is as intimidating as Madeira after like a pretty serious injury. So kudos to you. But we have to, you're the expert at heat training. We talked about this. I got to interview you, pick your brain, explore the incredible mind that is your mind, Corrine. So tell us, how did you execute nutrition in a heat, in a hot climate, coming from literally a snow vacation honeymoon? And how did you deal with the heat?
Yeah, going from a wintry honeymoon to a tropical island might not have been the best strategy there. But honestly, like spring ski touring, I think is kind of heat acclimation because you're just sweating buckets oftentimes the whole time if you get sunny days. Okay, so heat first, I guess. The race I don't think was overwhelmingly warm. There was only one moment, and it was on that big long climb that you warned me about. For those of you wondering what Hilly was talking about earlier, I legit texted her and I was like, okay, questions. What am I going to hate? What am I going to love? When am I going to want to die? Like, you fill me in. And she told me that, you climb out of, it's like the 63 or 64K aid station. You've got a huge climb out of there. It's like a 7-mile long climb. It's up to the most beautiful part of the course. If it's going to be sunny and warm, that's probably where it's going to be sunny and warm. And we had kind of an overcast day. Like it rained on us overnight. It kind of rained on us intermittently, that day. And through this section, we actually kind of got this little bit of a break. Like it was mostly overcast. And there's only probably only a couple miles of the entire race where I was like, I am warm. But I will tell you that I did not my brain wasn't working very well. And I was convinced that we had to go all the way to the 80 something K aid station before we got any assistance. And we're going up this climb and I'm like, I'm going to run out of water. Like, I'm not going to have enough liquid. Like, this is awful. I'm like, I'm going to have to try to dip a creek or something in order to get to the next aid station. Like, this is not good, and my stomach's kind of like, man, I'm like, okay, I would like liquid calories, please. Like dipping a stream in this mountain is not going to help me with that. I don't really want to eat any more chews. Like I'm kind of overeating, just done with it. And so heat wise, not a huge issue actually out there. I think it can be notorious. I think this race could be surprise hot for people, particularly in the afternoon after you've been running for, 12 hours. But I think we got very fortunate in the fact that it wasn't overwhelmingly warm. We got a little bit of solar, but I would say, to me anyway, I don't think I'm particularly well heat acclimated right now. And I think we did okay with the weather. So no need for like cooling strategies out there. But there are a lot of levadas. There are all these like irrigation ditches all over the place that you could probably lay down in if you really wanted to. But nutrition was kind of interesting. It was something that I don't think I've practiced super well in training. And because of the nature of this trip in which I like was on a month-long excursion, and we were traveling with ski crampons and ice tools and all sorts of weird stuff, skins and rope and stuff. Like I had weight restrictions on my pack, on my bag, to get from the US to Istanbul and Georgia and then over to Madeira. And so I was kind of limited in what kind of nutrition I could bring with me. And so I kind of hedged my bets, and I brought like I made some mistakes. I brought all one type of nutrition. It's a European race, so there aren't exactly gels out there. There's like cheese and bread and orange slices and lemon slices and isotonic drink, which has got electrolytes and some calories in it, and Pepsi. There's a lot of Pepsi out in the course. Sometimes cake and chocolate, but there's not like gels. There's cereal bars, and there's soup, and there's pasta, and there's, pasta sauces, but they're not going to be gels out there. Okay. And so your options for traditional, let's call it endurance fuel, is kind of limited. And so when I knew that I was going to struggle kind of like midway through the race with like continuing to manage to eat what I was eating, I kind of hedge bets with myself. I say, okay, you have to eat 4 goo chews right now, Corrine, and take some water. And then that becomes, okay, and that's every 30 minutes. And then that turns into, okay, I'm going to take 2 goo chews every 20 minutes. And then that turns into, okay, I'm going to take 1 goo chew every 10 minutes because I'm just getting tired of eating. And so this is a common phenomenon that we're all familiar with. I didn't have any GI distress, but I was just like not very interested in consuming food out there. So I defaulted to things I knew worked pretty well. I did a little bit of research ahead of the race, and I knew that the sports drink on course did have calories in it, that it wasn't just an electrolyte. So I knew that drinking bottles of that would provide calories, probably 100 to 150 calories a bottle. So not a lot, but not terribly low either. And I knew that I could also eat food and wash it down with that without it being too concentrated. So that was a big plus. And so I was going to lean into that. I had some Roctane in bottles that my crew had on course. So I was going to lean into that a little bit. And so I pivoted to a combination of bananas and liquid nutrition, I would say by the midpoint of the race, which I don't know. Is it the very best possible scenario? No, not at all. Oh, I had one spring energy gel that Stephen Kirsch lent me before the race, and that was great because I needed something. And I didn't bring any gels with me. All I had was goo chews and Roctane, which worked until it stopped working. So I had one gifted spring energy gel. But 100 calories is not going to get you that far. So I would say that I scored a solid like C+, B- on nutrition for this race. And, that's what it's about. It's about learning from your mistakes. I would say that ski training is also not the same as downhill running. And so the downhills, like where did I mess up in this race? Nutrition was not perfect, was not great. And not being prepared to run downhill was maybe the second biggest mistake I made. Like I just was kind of surviving the downhills as opposed to actually being able to really run them. And some of them are steep and they're hard to run, but there was definitely places out there to move much quicker than the movement I was making. But was able to maintain good energy throughout, I think, by being able to put down a bunch of liquid calories. And was able to eat pretty well for the first, I would say, like I made it to daytime, so I made it through 7 hours of the race, being able to take in pretty solid nutrition. And I think that set me up for the back half of the race in which I struggled a little bit. And so I think that that's really important to remember, is that you got to eat early, got to eat often, because when your stomach does turn, having those calories on board for those early hours, as opposed to getting behind from the gun, is really important. So I like would get dropped on uphills because I would like kind of slow down to make sure that I could eat for a second before I like picked back up again. And so I was watching guys fly by me, like not eating. And I was like, we've been running for 90 minutes and I haven't seen you have a snack yet. So I think I executed some of my nutrition really well, and I executed some of my nutrition really poorly. And it was all good lessons learned to take forward to TDS in August, which will be honestly a very similar race, I think.
Yeah. And so then I guess the last kind of question for this is about recovery. Do you think that, I mean, you've made it work, you made the nutrition work kind of to get you through the race, right? But then how do you think that impacted your recovery, and how is the recovery going aside from, the soreness of the quads from all the stairs?
Yeah. I think I was fortunate in the fact that we ended at, I was done running by like 6 p.m. I was, home to the hotel, showered and made it to dinner. My team manager sat with me at the finish line and made me put down a bottle of water and some potato chips before getting me to the car so that we could drive the hour back to the hotel. And traditionally, I don't eat very well immediately after races, as far as like being able to actually put food in, because I get really lightheaded and very nauseous generally after races of this length. But I think because we finished at a reasonable time of day and I was on the right time zone, I actually was able to eat dinner that night. Like I was able to get in a little bit of protein, some fats, some carbohydrates. I was trying to be gentle with my stomach and with myself, but I actually was able to put in a good amount of food that evening. My bigger struggle oftentimes after races is that my throat really, really hurts after races just from breathing for that long, to the point where it's like kind of painful to eat the next day. So I fall back again on liquid calories and eating very slowly, and a lot of cheese. So I managed to get in breakfast and some in a smoothie. And that's kind of what I default to back in the States too when I'm racing, is that I know I'm going to struggle to eat, French fries, which I would really like to eat because they're too crispy and they hurt my throat. So I default to, milkshakes and smoothies and these things where I know I can get a bunch of calories in, but that's going to be a lot easier for me to consume. So I think I was fortunate in the sense that even though I didn't have the biggest appetite the next day, I was able to get in really good calories. And then probably the best way to not recover is to have a 5 or 6 a.m. flight Monday. So like 24 hours after racing, which made for a very long travel day yesterday, which feels like it was a week ago. And it's kind of a miracle that I went from not being able to walk downstairs normal on Sunday to fully running through the Lisbon airport. And maybe it's because fight or flight kicked in because I was not going to make my flight. Due to, all the fun things that go through getting through international travel. But all of a sudden I was like legit running through the Lisbon airport. Like I ran up a flight of stairs and down a flight of stairs when I could not walk down a flight of stairs on Sunday. So I would say that I didn't exercise today. It's Tuesday. I'll probably go for a walk tomorrow on the beach, but I'm not, the plan is to take this week super, super easy and relaxed. I might, go for a bike ride for Steven's birthday this week, but it's, I'm not even worried about running, so that I make sure that I can recover properly and then hopefully get back into the swing of things soon. So I'm so excited to train for like the next thing, which is like really cool to come out of a race, just like really excited to kind of continue the journey.
Woohoo!
Yay, team.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, I think there's a lot of takeaways from that. And I love how you said it. It's a learning experience, right? Sometimes you mess up, but it's like you're learning and you've got now plenty of time to kind of take that into practice and take it for TDS.
Yeah. So, and in TDS, my strategy is going to be to find an Italian guy who speaks no English and have him run directly behind me for like 40 kilometers. And what he does though, is he yells at everyone we're catching so that they move out of the way. Like it was the highlight of my race was having this super strong, like masters athlete, Italian runner who I'd be like, you can go around me. And he'd be like, no. And he'd run right behind me. And he would just yell at everyone in front of us. And they would just like, the seas would part in front of us as we were running along. Awesome. So it's find an older Italian guy to chase around the mountains or chase you around the mountains. And apparently it works out okay. So it was fun. Madeira, if anyone's interested in an April ultra and you I don't know, you don't want to run canyons or something else. It was really, I can't speak like highly enough about the organization of the race. And the fact that like, I think all the distances are pretty cool there. Like I had teammates in the 42K, I had teammates in the 60K, I had teammates in the 85K. And that was like, everyone had a good race. Like everyone's race courses were cool. They all finish in the same spot and they just kind of start further and further back on the island. So there was a huge group from Telluride and Durango that made it out. Kelly Wolf, like annihilated the women's 85K. She flew by me like I was standing still. I was like, cool, she's running right now. This is apparently not running. So I don't know. I think if you're looking for a bucket list race and you don't hate stairs completely, and you're into bananas, I would go to Madeira.
Great selling point. Love it.
Two thumbs up. Two thumbs up for me on that one. Okay. I think we're going to talk a little bit, and this kind of ties into the Madeira conversation. Like we talked about how I took the world's longest taper basically in order to go to Madeira, and it turned out okay. Because sometimes being, quote unquote, undertrained is better than being overcooked. And you've heard us say this, I don't know, maybe a million times before. We're only 20 episodes in, so maybe it's not a million times, but stress is stress is stress. Like your body doesn't know the difference between running stress and work stress and life stress. And so, I think we're all kind of constantly asking ourselves, and we get questions from people all the time, like, how do you find balance in all of that? Like that work-life running balance. And personally, I'm in this camp that balance is kind of a fallacy. Like life is a series of kind of imbalance towards one thing or another. And that's okay as long as you recognize that and you plan for that and you accept it. Right. And the biggest thing there, I think, is that it's how you choose to handle those moments. And I know, Keely, obviously your job situation has changed a lot in the past couple months. But I've always been really impressed with your ability to be this like master juggler, right? I was like, Keely's got a big kid job. She's running. All of a sudden she's got a big kid job and she's running and she's, taking classes again and studying for the MCATs. Like I'm wondering, as this master juggler, like one, was that like, how sustainable was that? And how did you find sustainability in it? Right? Like that's a huge question.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, it's always a balancing act. So sometimes there are things that are getting more attention and less attention, but I'd say that I definitely didn't have it balanced for a while. When you have a full-time job that requires 50 to 60 hours of your time, even if you're not prioritizing it with 100% of yourself, and also trying to race at our kind of level, and all the other things that come with life, there's just really, in my opinion, not a way to balance it super well. But I mean, yeah, it's really hard. I think I am a really good juggler, but I think I also I like being a good juggler to my own demise. And so I don't think it's necessary to be able to juggle every single thing. And so one of the reasons why I decided to leave my job when I decided I wanted to go back to school and pursue running full time was because it's like the first time in my life where I accepted doing less, and that it didn't mean I was like failing by not being busy 120% of the time. And really just being able to channel energy to all of the things I'm dedicated to. So now like I can give 100% to running and I can give 100% to school, and I'm not spread so thin that I'm giving like 70% of myself to everything, even when I'm giving it all my time. And so I to your point, I do think it's always a balancing act, but I think if you only are spread so thin, even when you're giving like 100% of yourself to something, if you're spread too thin, it's not as much as you could give it in real life. If you had more time. So I really like having the time. It's definitely hard for me to be okay with a lot more free time. Sometimes I freak out a little bit, but I think it's good.
Yeah, that's that like perfectionist tendency. And I get it. I love being overextended. I think I'm like I don't know. I don't think I have ADHD or anything, but I think I'm I call myself a lazy perfectionist. Like I like being overextended and I work the best on like really, really hard deadlines. But it's not my cortisol does not like that nearly as much. And I think we all coach really busy humans who happen to also have really big running goals. And I'm wondering, I feel like I learn constantly from those athletes, right? Like they've got insane jobs, they have kids, they have, significant others that are, I mean, obviously you want all these things to be important and to not get neglected. And so I'm wondering if either one of you have picked up anything or learned anything from like being able to be an observer in I mean, our lives are busy, but the athletes that I coach, their lives are next level busy, it feels like.
I learned so much from the athletes that I coach, and I fall into every single camp that you guys do being overextended, right? But you have to kind of draw a line of like, when is too much and when kind of things are merging together. I mean, something that it wasn't just, I don't necessarily have like a boundaries of a 9-to-5 job, right? So it can kind of merge. And so if you're trying to constantly balance that, I think I might fall into Corrine's category of like, I don't know if balance exists. I think there's like ebbs and flows. And so it's really trying to find when to put more time into something when it's like more important to do that, right? It's like kind of alluding to also to our off-season talk, right? Like we can't devote time to training all the time, right? Like sometimes we need to dial it back, but sometimes we need to dial it up. And then all those other things in our life, we have to find a way to kind of to balance those as well. But I'm not perfect at it. But I think there's some things that like, we can hopefully teach and like show others. Like for me, it's just recognizing what are the most important things in my life, like maybe even on a weekly basis, and knowing that I have to devote time to these categories more this week versus the next week, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's how that like a balanced imbalance works, right? Like I tell athletes, like, okay, not like it's not, and we'll talk more, I guess we use the term like sacrifice. It's not sacrifice. We're like making choices, right? And I'll say, okay, like this week, like this, like, and we're looking ahead, we're looking way ahead at the schedule. This is your big A race. And then we're going to backtrack from there. And it's like, okay, these are the weeks where I think, running is going to be, we need to try to prioritize this week. Right. And it's like your family's on board, work's on board. You're going to make time that week or like this week. And then a couple of weeks later to manage that, like you're not dropping the ball on the home front, on the work front, et cetera, so that you can still obtain those goals. And I think that's where that like balanced imbalance comes into place, where it's like, not every week's going to be like that, but it's really important to have, to recognize ahead of time, like, okay, next week I am going to be training a lot and I might not be the best, I'm not going to be the perfect partner. I might not be the perfect parent. I might not be the perfect employee, but it's just that week. It's just this block. It's just this little phase. And then, it kind of like, I'm like rest weeks and low seasons or low weeks. Like those are the perfect times, I think, where it's like, okay, like running takes a backseat in those periods and those weeks, and other life things that maybe, quote unquote, were neglected a little bit can like be serviced again in a really like, and hopefully a positive way, so that at some point it's like the equilibrium of the whole year is in existence, when week to week equilibrium's kind of in maybe higher flux than usual.
Right.
Yeah. And I think if you are used to juggling 4 things and you've figured out how to kind of balance all of those, but then all of a sudden, if you're having your athletes tell you like when things change during the week and all of a sudden they're balancing 7, then you have to let them realize that, hey, this week we're going to back off of running. It's not going to make your fitness decrease because it's just a week, but like you can't balance all 6 of these things, and you shouldn't, even if it is only for a week, because it's just not worth it. Now, if it's a whole change in lifestyle, then obviously you have to consider different things, because you're going to have to train a little bit if you do want to pursue the sport or pursue these kind of races. But I feel like having them tell you about different things that are going on in their life lets them like almost see it and realize like, oh, maybe this week is a little bit more than I normally bite off. And maybe it's okay to pump the brakes on the training front or whatever it might be.
Right. And something that like I'm not perfect at either is like getting on the road, right? Like, I mean, I love to get into my
van life.
Right. I love it. It's like, it's a great way to be able to incorporate, training in real life, right? Like, I mean, I live in a great place here. I have access to trails, but especially if I'm traveling for a race or, in a place for a longer period of time, it is a disruption to my life, right? But it can be a very positive way, but it's like, knowing that if I'm on the road, upping the recovery, upping kind of these other things that could maybe fall fall off if, my regular routine is kind of disrupted. And that's something I learned for Gorges, right? Like it was great to be on the road. I've done it before, but I don't think I nailed the recovery as much. And then also kind of the mental aspect. And so I was kind of left like, I was already, going into the race, not tapered. And I just kind of fell like physically flat and mentally flat. So, it's not perfect, but it was a huge learning experience for me. So now I know what to do for next time. Or, as Keely mentioned, there's a reason why she did Gorges. It was close to her home. And my next race is actually close to home for me too. So it's, we're not perfect, but hopefully our mistakes can help you.
Yeah. I think it's all those things that there's a lot of like intentionality, I think there, right? It's like, okay, well, like I love that you were like, okay, this week, what needs attention? Like, I like that. Like, I'm going to add that to my like little notebook thing of like, okay, this week, what needs attention? Like what is the priority this week? Because I find that like things just get tacked to my to-do list and it just kind of keeps scrolling down. And so I think it's important to kind of set that intention. And you can do that even in smaller doses too, right? Like I was listening to an interview with a Olympic biathlete the other day, and he was talking about how that's what he did for training this year. Like he's got a training, like part of his training journal is that before every training session, he's okay, what's my intention for this workout? I'm like, that's really practical. Like, okay, like I could totally incorporate that. Like and that makes like, okay, my intention today is like, this is a recovery run. It makes it a lot easier to run slow enough for it to be a recovery run. My intention in training today is a rest day. It makes it a lot easier to be intentional about that rest day. So I think the same thing can be said for these life things, right? Like what's my intentions this week? What needs my attention this week? What are my intentions today? What needs my attention today? And then hopefully that kind of, I think, helps to, I don't know, balance that equilibrium out a little bit quicker, maybe.
And one thing too, is like, that's how I think about it from like week to week. Right. And sometimes it can change if I know, I have a high, block of training for these 2 weeks, but also something that's helped me too is I can be a little bit of a recluse and I can like just get in my routine and be like, I don't need anyone else. I'm just going to do me and go to bed at 8 and, get up at 5 and be running and just be in Hillary world. But the truth is we all need a team. And thankfully, I mean, I have some great individuals, not all of them, live here, but still it's like, they've helped me to realize it's like, you need people, you need to be able to see people and hang out with people. And so realizing that, okay, well, if I have a workout tomorrow, maybe that tonight is not the night to go out late and like have a social night with friends, if I need to prioritize sleep, but maybe like for a rest day, like if I know I have a rest day tomorrow, if I know I have a recovery run, like those are the nights where I could also kind of prioritize the other stuff that's like very necessary, because I can't emphasize enough. Training is great. You can spend all the time in the world training, having the most perfect training block, but a happy athlete runs the best and the most well-balanced athlete runs the best. And you have to pay attention to those other intangible parts of just being a human and not just like a robot runner.
Yeah, I think being a busy person sometimes helps to create that balance a little bit. Like I know so many athletes who have like, they'll go full time and it's like they have too much time now and they don't know what to do with themselves. And they, it's like you can only train so many hours of the day. You have to have other stuff going on. And so I think it's, sometimes being, not to say it's a blessing and maybe it's a blessing and a curse to be a busy human, to be doing a lot of things in your life, because it's like the blessing is that maybe it's hard to overdo it in any one area. And the curse is that maybe you want to overdo it in any one area. But I think that, it's important to recognize that, yeah, there are going to be times where maybe you're not going to be the life of the party. And there are going to be times where you get to be. And I think it's important to embrace kind of what akin to listening to your body, right? Like you have to listen to like those psychological needs too, and lean into those so that you're not trapped in a training cycle that doesn't serve you either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Look at this wisdom.
I love it.
Can we slam it?
Yeah.
Let's slam it. Our favorite part of every episode. My favorite part of every episode. Okay. So Society Slam, you know what we're about. You slide into our DMs all the time. Society Slam, as always, is brought to you by our friends over at Oura Ring. We cannot thank them enough. I think Keely was the first one to put anything in the document for Society Slam. So I think by default, that means she has to go first.
Perfect. I have a little shout out to start off. So last week, Corinne, when you were gone, Hillary and I did a little society slam, and I shouted out a local race org called Go Beyond with their mixed trail nonprofit like donation system where you can support runners who can't afford race entries. And
That's so
since
cool.
then, they reached out to me the other day and said they've got at least one person since that day came out and told them that they were donating because they heard it on the pod. So thanks to whoever donated. They said that they are now a 401(c) nonprofit, so you can write it off. And that donation is going to go fund someone's race entry. So there's going to be one new person towing the line at a start line this year. So thank you.
I have chills, like legit
So cool.
chills. That's so cool. What a fun, like, way to give back to the community in a way that feels very tangible. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I have one other shout out. Sorry, I'm going to do two, but the second one's short as well, but it was also a DM highlighting in a race in Triangle, Virginia. It was a 24-hour adventure race, and it was a small race, but the top 4 places were women. So it's pretty cool. This race company also has an all women's 50K that they put on. And so one of their major goals is to increase the diversity in trail running, as well as increase the number of women participating. So shout out to them.
That's amazing.
So cool.
We're in all women 50K. We're in. You heard it here first. We're doing it.
Yeah.
Hillary, what do you got?
All right. So I have a really special one. So just to go to show that our podcast, I think it goes, more than just the running community. So a good friend of mine, Kate Boyle, she's a pro mountain biker for Industry 9. She has an incredible story herself. She has the FKT on the Cocopelli Trail. She was the 24-hour world mountain bike champion in 2019. So she's getting ready to do Race Worlds this in a couple weeks. But she just sent me a little message, and so I'm just going to read it. She said, "I appreciate the celebration of the amount of food we're eating." She doesn't have the leanest natural body type, and as a cyclist, the focus on power to weight ratio can be a bit haunting. She just did a stage race, and it was a 5-day stage race. And she said she ate 80 grams of carbs per hour and 6 meals a day outside of the race. She said it felt excessive for racing, 1.5 to 3.5 hours a day, but it's what her nutritionist told her to do. And she said that she raced the last 2 days, the strongest that she'd ever raced, and including setting the highest ever 20-minute power by 20 watts, which is 10%. So that's huge on day 5, which is the last day of this stage race, and her highest 90-minute power that day too. So she felt like she definitely got stronger. And she says that they don't have like a podcast in the cycling space like this. And she really enjoys listening to us because she can relate to a lot of what we say. So.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Gives me chills too.
I have more chills now.
Yay, Kate. Go and follow Kate. She's a badass, and cheer her on for her 24-hour worlds. It's coming up. She's going over to Italy in a couple weeks.
That's so exciting. That's so many grams of carbs. It's my new goal.
She's so strong.
That's amazing. I'm a little jealous of being on the bike sometimes where you don't get that stomach jostle. So it's a little bit easier maybe to cram the food in.
Yeah.
Okay. We are shouting out. I am shouting out. We've shouted her out before. Jackie Hunt Brusma is, as of today, she's running her 100th marathon in a row. Jackie's an amputee. She ran, I think that her 92nd marathon was at Boston. Today is April 26th when we're recording. So by the time this comes out, she will have, fingers crossed, knocking on the wooden desk that I'm sitting at, likely have set a world record for running the most marathons in a row. She found out like just a week or 2 ago that a woman like had actually run 100 marathons in a row, which is the goal that she had. And so she's like, okay, I guess I have to run a little bit more. So she is running at least 102 marathons in a row. I'll let you know if she makes it, but I think she's going to. I can't imagine that. Like, I can't imagine. It's so many marathons. It's so many miles. She's doing it on a prosthetic leg. It's really, really cool. And it's very, very inspiring. And we've shouted out Jackie out once before, and we're going to shout her out again. And I'm going to shout her out on Twitter every time that she runs another marathon in the next couple of days. But it's really, really cool and very inspiring. And it's just been we've been following along for months now, which is kind of wild to think about. So congratulations, Jackie, on what you're doing. Very, very inspiring. Very cool to see. I think that's it. We're going to close out the show. So as always, right? Like, you know how to reach us. Slide into our DMs, tweet at us. I think that's what people do, right? You tweet at people. Like, follow, subscribe, all those things that you're supposed to do. Big shout out again to our sponsors and support at Free Trail and with Oura Ring. We couldn't do it without them. So until next time, we'll see you on the trails.